the day marches on. We've got the Bolts and the Valks that are going to be playing up against each other. But first, I want to tell you guys that we are thrilled to have Alienware partnering with us again for Season 9. Of course, look, the video played so much last year that unless you are, well, I guess we probably got some new viewers, right? If you're a new viewer and you aren't aware, first off, go to, I'm pretty sure it's on youtube.com/SmitePro, and you can watch it. Also, yeah, put a 1 in the chat. That's a fun one. Either way, Alienware was with us all through Season 8, and they're going to be with us here again in Season 9, and we're really thrilled to have them. All the players, you'll see them in the player cams. They're playing on Aurora Ryzen R10 desktops. These things are powerful beasts, and Alienware are amazing at providing not only those, but brilliant monitors. I think they were 240 hertz.
Yes, sir.
Again, great experience for playing on any game that you want. Recently bought Katie an Alienware because we needed a new PC when hers kind of caught on fire because it wasn't an Alienware.
Air quotes, caught on fire.
Well, yeah, it started smoking dramatically. Either way, you do want to give them a follow at Alienware. That's on Twitter, Instagram, anywhere you can find them. And of course, go to alienwarearena.com to join their global community for giveaways and more. So thank you again for Alienware and joining us one more time. Thank you at home for joining us here today, which is Day 6 Masters set number 2. The Bolts and the Valks going up against each other. It's still me and Miff that are hanging out here on the desk. And Mifflin, this one, I'm excited for this one because I feel like this is a wild card match. I think we've come to expect a lot from the Bolts, and I'm quoting Barra. Granted, I didn't watch this week's episode that had Hurry on it, but from the backliners the week prior, he just straight up said, yeah, I don't think it's revealing much for us to say that we don't know what we're doing. And so probably something's changed in the week since then, but I think the Valks having a little bit of experience on this patch, granted only 3 games that they played on Sunday. It's going to make things interesting for them. Take a look at the bracket one more time, just so you know what's going on if you're just tuning in. The Bolts and the Valks are where we are at now. Winner of this goes up against the Dragons in the next set. Loser will play a little later today against the Hounds and fight for their right to stay in the Masters tournament altogether. And again, a huge cash prize at the end of this. If you get first place, it's a great chunk of change for your team.
Oh, yeah.
I believe $40K just to the winner, not including, of course, the second place, third place, fourth, fifth, sixth, all that other stuff. But you can find that out on SmiteProLeague.com. It's in the blog for it. And right now, that's kind of what's on the mind, right? A good paycheck that can come through for these teams, as well as at ultimate bragging rights at this point. You can say literally, you're the best team in Smite. All the SCT teams that got eliminated, Sands for the Hounds, and then of all the SPL teams that are left, with the Titans and the Kings still waiting tomorrow for their opponents from today, it makes things pretty interesting. But the Bolts, Mifflin, they're a strong team. They're a hard-to-beat team.
They're difficult. I don't know how 9.5 has changed them, and if we're going to believe Barracuda, he doesn't know either. But I think this is a team that has been very good historically at adapting to meta shifts. The Bolts, I feel like, have got some really strong theory crafters behind them. But it's not just theory, and it's not just the coach, Mask, making up these strategies, but it's also individual mechanical plays that comprise the Bolts. And I think you can look no further for mechanical plays than their Soul Laner. Haddox has been just dominant across the board. He's self-proclaimed best player in the league, and he makes pretty strong arguments for it every single time we are allowed to watch him. But I am curious as to what version of Haddox we're going to get. I know a lot of these SPL Soul Laners have been hopping on Twitter saying, man, they really gutted Warriors. I do not want to go to that role. Guardians don't feel great either. And even in the last set, we saw a couple of Hunters locked in instead. So we could be looking at a completely different version of Haddox, or the Olympus Bolts up against the Valkryies, SPL versus SPL, going to keep it more in line with that standard meta that we've seen developed. Either way, I think it's going to be a very exciting match, but it's hard to say what we're going to see. It's hard to predict anything when legitimately we don't know anything about these teams anymore. 9.5 is such a radical change from what we've seen in just weeks previously.
I will say Rowe, I think, mentioned yesterday on Waiting Room that he was surprised we weren't seeing more Horus, that he could probably fit pretty well in solo because he's got early game scaling that favors him as a warrior, and then he turns into essentially a glorified Guardian by the end of the game, so you get a second tank. And something that pretty much only Haddox was playing, so if I was going to give it to any team, I have to imagine it would be here, and it'd be that guy playing him. But we'll figure out whether or not it even is going to happen for them in picks and bans. The other side, though, and this is where things get a little more complicated for you, Haddox, I think, has had a stellar Not even year. I mean, last year and a half now
Career?
at this point. Yeah,
Just a
his
stellar
SPL
career.
career has been really good. Hell, his SCC career was really good, as it turns
This guy
out.
might be good.
He might just be a phenomenal player. He's going to be going up against Aquarius, somebody else very tenured. For people who are curious, this is not Aquarius' first rodeo. He's been in the SPL before. In fact, teamed with Barra before. And so he has been around the scene for a while, played a lot of great Smite, has some excellent performances. This is going to be one that really tests his grit.
And I know the KDA isn't as explosive as the 6 point whatever we just
Yeah.
saw from Haddix.
Haddix is
1.64.
absolutely insane.
Yeah, maybe not as impressive, but Aquarius has very quickly become the standout player on the Valhalla Valkyries for me. He is incredibly consistent, has always been able to just make his own stamp on the game, has a very diverse god pool, very eclectic, capable of playing just about anything in the Warrior or Guardian tab, and at times even Assassins. So I'm excited again to see what version of Aquarius we get, whether or not these teams are going to go towards the Hunters and the Soul Lane, or we're going to see more of the same, more Initiators, more Baron Samdi out of these guys. Either way, I think that in 9-5, Soul Lane is a little bit mitigated in early game effectiveness. You're not going to see too many solo kills, especially with two players of this caliber, both Haddix and Aquarius. Obviously incredibly strong players, probably not going to be making mistakes that will cost them their lives in the early portions, which means one of two things. We can see what we saw in week 1, which is a whole lot of these Soul Laners just farming up and then looking for their first opportunity to rotate, generally around level 17 to 20. Or we're going to see what we've seen a little bit of yesterday, which is where these junglers start to rotate over towards Soul Lane a little bit more consistently, try and make something happen there so that they can transition their Soul Laners in towards the Pyromancer, which is, again, become that early game objective, the de facto early game objective.
Yeah.
Gold Furies aren't falling. They are so hard to kill. So Pyromancers...
And they hit back harder,
Dude, they
too.
swing. They are.
They
hit
changed
bombs.
that one channel now doing like magical damage. Like, it hurts,
Yes.
dude.
And
As a
Pyromancer didn't get
support,
that.
it really hurts me personally. It's like an affront to my like existence. I can't go in and just tank objectives anymore. You got to think about it. And you got to like trade it off. There's a lot more coordination with my teammates as opposed to me tank, me run.
Yeah, and now, because Gold Fury is so much stronger, you got to channel that aggression somewhere.
Yeah.
You got to hit
It's all on
something.
Pyromancer.
And unfortunately for Pyromancer, that's where it's been, which has leaned the meta a little bit closer towards the Soul Lane. It's no longer, hey, duo pressure wins you the game because you get the Gold Fury on repeat.
Yeah.
Now, Soul Lane pressure a little bit more important. That mid 3v3 has become a little bit more important as well. So, again, just curious to see how these SPL teams are going to line up against each other.
And this is where things get even wilder. So at the beginning of the year, granted, it got nerfed a little bit. The Indra Scepter was like the talk of the town, where it was like, okay, if your dual lane sucks, then then your team's out. It doesn't matter anymore. Obelisk control is all that matters. Now that Scepter, again, after like getting changes, dual lane pressure was still like important, but
Now it's
kind
a
of ignored.
trebuchet.
Now it's a trebuchet, and that's what I was going to ask. Like with Gold Fury being hard to kill, the trebuchet just existing as it does. And then on the other side of the map, Pyromancer being the kind of more easy to take, and admittedly for the Bolts, one of the objectives that they would have gone for anyway, because if you lose it, it's not really the end of the world, but if you get it, it's a nice little advantage to you. It almost feels like, I guess the question really is the trebuchet enough to maybe counterbalance that and kind of spread it out across the board, or do you think that you can ignore the Obelisk for a little bit? That Pyromancer is like immediate rewards.
So the answer to the Scepter previously was kill the guy who is now incredibly strong because he's got another source of damage.
Just kill him dead.
Not easy to do. The Trebuchet in the early game, not exactly the most valuable thing on the planet. It's pretty easy to lock those down. We'll see a lot of these teams just leave the Trebuchet in base until they can find an opportunity to split the map. I think the main strength of the Trebuchet is around these elongated engagements around Gold Fury or the Fire Giant. If you can spawn a Trebuchet in the dual lane and then start your dance around fire, Trebuchet will legitimately take a tier 1 and a tier 2 on its own every single time. And because towers are so strong now, when you're dancing around the Fire Giant, generally that tier 1 and tier 2 are still up. So still very strong, but if we were going to, apples to oranges, Interceptor was just better, right? Like, it was just stronger.
It's harder to get rid of, right? Yeah, it's so harder to take away from the map. We'll see, I guess. We haven't seen any, like, crazy, hey, that was, like, if they didn't have Trebuchet, that play doesn't happen.
We did see one really good one where they took out, like, 2 towers on their own during a Fire Giant siege. It was pretty sick.
We also saw it yesterday go into the Titan room.
Didn't even know it could do that.
All of us were like, whoa, it can get that far? everybody stopped for a second like, holy, well, I can't say that. Almost cursed on broadcast, but
Not
I caught
this time.
myself. Hindu can't get mad at me. But it was still impressive, and just so you know, that's how genuine the reaction was, because it was so wild to see it in there. Good news is that we've got the Valks, not the Valks. How about the Bolts? We got
The Vens.
two 5-letter team that are playing against each other here, and they got confused. We got the Vin standing by, the mid laner here for the Bolts. And Vin, I guess I want to ask you, 9.5, a lot of changes. I keep, I guess, harping on Barra, because at one point he said that he's like, yeah, we have no idea what's going on. But how do you feel that the team's kind of adapted to the time to kill changes, all the balances that has happened, the trebuchet, like the whole thing?
I think we adapted pretty well. I mean, a week and a half in of like scrimming and stuff, I don't think any team would create the meta.
Yeah.
So there's probably going to be like a land meta that happens. So it's a little bit rough with like best of ones. It's harder to adapt. But like once like best of 3s, best of 5 start showing, you'll start seeing like the land meta make, and probably whoever's leading, you'll see more teams like going towards that.
Yeah.
Like, we saw today like the new wall coming out. Like Kings did really well on it yesterday. So you'll see more new wall there. And yeah, we'll see if more stuff happens like that.
That's the thing that's been really interesting to me. We've seen, I think, a wider variety of mages, or at least a lot different mages than we're used to over the last couple of weeks, than we've seen maybe over the last like 2 years combined, really. But at the same time, a lot of hunters getting thrown into mid. Do you have a preference as to which one that you get to play? Like, just do you prefer getting to your hands on the mages, or right now are hunters just strong enough that you don't care?
I mean, I think it's nice to always have like the metas where you can like pick or choose. There's like different ways to play with it. Hunters do different things than mages.
Yeah.
You pick hunters for different reasons than you pick mages. So it's just kind of dependent on like how the team wants to play and like how they play. Like if they play through mid, if they don't, if they like play for different type of things. It's just hard to like, see. Like I don't mind either one. I think they're both like fun. More options.
Whatever
always
you
better.
gotta play.
Yeah,
Look, you don't get an MVP by not being able to flex around a little bit,
Yeah.
right? So you guys are going to be going up against the Valks. Granted, like you've played them, I guess, a few times at this point.
Yeah.
But this is a team that had a little bit of experience. They got to play the Scarabs on Sunday. They got a little more under their belt. Did you guys spend a lot of time watching that footage? Do you think those 3 games were like critical, or was it a lot more like scrim time to try and get, the patch under your own hands?
We ended up watching, I believe, the sets as a team at that point. So we watched the VODs and see like what people are running and different things that people come up with. I mean, they're coming in fresh, Valks, since they've already played, so they have a little bit of warm up. But yeah, I mean, we watch what they do and see like that, and we'll just see if the meta we've been playing is
going to match
their
up.
meta. Yeah, so it's a double limb, so
Yeah.
it's always nice to be able to like, if you mess up there, then you're like, okay, we can adjust here, and then just have to play through losers and stuff.
Well, it sounds like you did your homework, so I'm excited to see what you guys have to offer, not just here, but throughout any of the other sets that you play in today. So good luck in your game,
Thank you
man.
very much.
We'll see you a little bit later.
All right, have a good one.
Well, already, one of the things I'm picking up from this, Mifflin. First off, good news for Ven, and probably, I think, a lot of the players, because we'll get to see the meta evolve throughout all of this. This is the last best of 1, as far as I remember. It's best of 3 for the rest of the day, 3 of those, and then 4 best of 3s tomorrow, and then a best of 3 and a best of 5 on Sunday. So it's nothing but sets with adaptation from this point forward. And I think that's going to adapt a lot of it, like you said, like a land meta that could potentially come out. It sounds like they've got a decent grip on what they're expecting to play today. So I'm curious what differences we might see from the Bolts in this first game as opposed to what the Valks might be playing and what we've kind of seen over the last week and a half.
Before I even evaluate this matchup, I have to say, from a player's perspective, had I been listening to that interview from Ven, legitimately scared. Like, that guy has got his head on his shoulders straight. He said, look, they've got their own meta. That's cool. It's doubling limb. If my meta doesn't work, well, we'll just adapt immediately. It's just like...
It's almost scary, right?
It's crazy how calm and
together.
cool and collected he was there, just realizing, okay, like, we're 9-5. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all trying to figure out what it is, what everyone's come up with. This emergent meta, I think, is a great way to describe it, or even land meta, as these teams try and figure out exactly what breaks the game in 9-5. It's just crazy to hear, man. Ven clearly showing his veteranship there. I'm sitting here like, oh, man, the Bolts got something. Like, that's all I got from him.
And that's what I love the most. Is not only is it like you have to quake a little bit, but like he didn't reveal anything. He answered so eloquently, and I loved it, but I could not tell you a thing of what they're going to go doing in there.
That's his fallback.
He's been running for governor well, maybe not next year. He's been doing pretty well. Like 6 years from now, I could see it maybe happening on the horizon for him. But yeah, no, I mean, it's been I think fun to be able to try and again brainstorm this one. Very similar to what the Dragons had experienced earlier and what we were experiencing with them, which is we haven't seen them play on this patch yet. We don't know what to expect. We can guess, and my guesses would be, hey, probably going to see a few Hunters, maybe some Warriors, but that might happen for the Bolts, but you never really know. I think a lot of fun questions that will be answered in Picks and Bans, but Picks and Bans is going to be a little bit before we get into those. We're fixing some things on the back end, so we will be right back with the Bolts and the Valks right after this quick break. Welcome back, everyone. The Bolts and the Valks are going to be going up against each other here. In just a second, we'll be jumping into picks and bans. I hope you used your break as well as we did. We were learning things, a lot of things. Like, we learned
about Black Sabbath.
We did learn about Black Sabbath. Well, not even. We learned about the Ozzy Osbourne song, Mr. Crowley, and who it was about. And all of that was tied to something in the First Crusade at one point with you. I was looking up D&D stuff because it was all over the place. We were learning, though. We'll see how much of that sticks. I now know the name Aleister Crowley, though. And so that's something that, as long as I repeat it one more time, I'll probably remember it.
You might summon him on accident.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, no, it's Beetlejuice all over again. We'll have to be, very, very cautious with that one. Can't say Beetlejuice more than twice.
Okay, well, that was your second,
know,
so let's calm down.
Well, let's see what happens if you say it one more time. Either way, Mercury, Kali, banned out here. As we kick things forward, we need to get someone. We need to get a black and white striped suit so that we could just do that bit constantly, where like you say the name 3 times. And
I won't be doing it.
Cautious.
I won't be
doing
doing
it. And then
it.
someone we just angle the camera very cautiously so you can't see their head, and then someone walks behind us on the desk every time. It'd
no,
be
thank
fun.
you. We got a thumbs up from Mike though.
Yeah, Mike. Look, Mike's all about it. Anything that fun on the set. We go to Mike. He's the guy for it. Mercury, Artemis, Kali, and King Arthur are the bans so far here for the Bolts and the Valks. And this one, again, going to be interesting to me. Artemis is honestly, I want to say surprising in that I feel like she's never one who normally is the lightning rod for a ban, unless the meta is super heavy in her favor. But also, Wowie and specifically BennyQ will play her, and will usually play her very well.
Yeah, Artemis, I think, just fits this meta really, really well. The itemization leaning the way that it does, having consistent auto attacks, and Vengeful Assault being as strong a stim as it is, will generally tend to lean towards Artemis and any really hunter that has got an auto attack speed stim. So, if Artemis is banned, I think Jingwei will probably be the topic of conversation. The Bolts in first pick could take it for themselves, and, well, Barracuda's up to 115 plays of Jingwei, so I would be legitimately surprised if they didn't take it here. Similarly, other hunters that have risen recently in power rankings, Heimdall comes to mind, Rom comes to mind, 2 picks that have largely been pretty strong since Season 7 all the way till now. But it is the Jingwei, and it is Barracuda, and I don't think anybody is surprised.
No, not in the least. In fact, I'm trying to get to it as quick as I can, but to see just how many games this dude has on this gun.
A lot.
We'll go to the pick stats. This is how easy it is, right? So this has the pick stats, and it'll be it's organized originally by name. And so Omega comes up first because he used a 0 as the O. But then I can go over here, I can click play count, and I can tell you very happily this will be the 105th game that Barracuda has played Jingwei. And that is more Jingwei than most people have time on any god. If you could have a god maybe 2-star, that's still not as much competitive time as Barra has on this god. And it's just so wild to think. The next one up is adapting on Thor, so that one's always fun.
That makes sense.
Unfortunately, though, it's at that 96. It crested right before it could hit 100. He's got to come back just for 4 games, man. You don't even have to win them. Just play Thor for us. Either way, Jingwei locked in. And the Nox, something that was very, very kind and very, very well played and executed by the Bolts. Jake loved this pick prior to all of the changes and the patch changes. And it's not necessarily maybe surprising to see them pick it up, but we haven't seen it a lot over the last week and a half, so it is definitely different than what we've seen on 9.5.
It is. So it seems the Bolts are going to stick with their guns and try and play that standard meta that they had developed a little bit earlier on this year. Osiris, I think, an interesting lock-in for the Bolts in that we've seen a fair bit of Osiris this week and in weeks previous. Namely, Relentless One was just having a absolute tear on this pick. Bumba's Hammer in like 3rd slot really does just make it nearly impossible to shut down Osiris. The Valks, on the other hand, have got themselves a composition that I think is a little bit more so in line with what is developed throughout this LAN. Bologna very quickly becoming a very powerful selection. Yeah. We've been seeing a lot of Golden Blade in the 1st slot to help out a lot with that clear. And then having a disarm consistently from Scourge means that you really don't have to worry about all these auto attackers that have been the meta. As of now, just Jingwei and Osiris that's going to struggle up against that pick. But maybe the most interesting selection so far is this Surcat. If this were previous patches, before these minor reworks, we'd talk about the flex potential of Surcat. Nowadays, flex potential, not exactly the name of the game for her. Her tank stats are just incredibly poor. So I think this is likely headed for Kirmi in the jungle. It's going to afford you a lot of early clear. You're one of the fastest clears on the map. I think Bakasura probably the only god that's going to outpace Surcat, especially now that she's got a cleave auto attack. But her early game presence is pretty hard to deal with, especially once she ticks over to level 5.
Yeah.
Surcat was one of the old answers to Jingwei for junglers.
Yeah.
You airstrike away, it's not going to cleanse the bleed. It's not going to cleanse that poison off you. You've got so much burst on Surcat that maybe just the combo plus ultimate could shut down a Jingwei in the early portion of the match. I'm very curious to see how the Valks elect to play around this Surcat, whether or not it is going to be early game presence or more slated for those late game 1v1s. If it is early game, you've got a Merlin flanking you, which means objective burn and DPS, not going to be an issue.
I was going to actually ask exactly that, right? I was wondering because I was like, oh man, Surcat's like super mobile. And Jingwei is known for getting away. You can't run, or you can't outrun a runner. And I guess that's the
You
case.
can run.
But you can't hide. Yeah, and there you go. And that's exactly where they're going to be going. It's Bakasura, Susano that are the final 2 bans there for the Valks. The other side, Geb, Yamoja taken away. And the Valks are going to be saving Gamma's pick for last. So we'll be seeing what they lock in to answer that Nox in just a little bit. Rom gets locked in, not presumably, should be going to Wowie unless they're doing something absolutely wild. And that is a pick that, again, in the best hands, and honestly, in some of the most fun metas that we've gotten to see, some Rom snipes and the way that duo lane can shake out could be incredibly interesting. Also someone that, admittedly, can get some of that finalized damage. Jingwei is low, uses that airstrike to get away. You've got some good range on those ult shots.
Good chase down potential, decent objective steal potential, the ability to start off a fight with that ultimate and essentially remove one player, at least 70% of them, before the engagement even starts in earnest. Rom, very adaptable, and with that auto attack speed stim, can utilize Silver Branch, can utilize this crit style build, kin size, very, very well. Looking at the picks and bans as of now, I think the Valkryies might be leaning towards Khepri for their support lock-in. When you're playing against Nox, Geb's like the best answer, full stop. Shadowlock's going to stop that, but if you can't play Geb, and you can't because the Bolts have taken it away in their second phase of bans, Khepri's a pretty decent runner-up in that you've got a whole lot of single-target lockdown, single-target CC from Nox, generally single-target CC from Jingwei. Maybe a Khepri can revive that one target, make it much more difficult for the Bolts to find that opening thread, that first pick to lead them into a team fight. Now with the Bolts picking up a Daji for themselves and a Morrigan, essentially making it a double Daji composition, you got to be worried about the Valk's ability to survive that wave of CC. Rom's got CC immunity. Surkat's got conditional CC immunity as long as an enemy is nearby. Bellona can deal with it relatively well. But this Merlin is going to struggle.
It's not going to be a fun time. Luckily for Benny Q, he seems to have it under wraps most of the time. We've seen a lot of good Merlin plays over the last couple of years. We always talk about eclectic god pools, but that's one that is going to create some interesting discussion. Baron Samedi, it took me a second to place it. Just the same way I looked over at the Nox and I was like, wait a minute, who's support on the bolts again? It's been a while since we've seen the mages thrown over there. And I guess this will be the test. If 9.5, these mages can still work in support as well as they did. And I have to assume, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this Baron is going to the duo lane.
Yeah, I just got to think so as well.
Unless they're doing something real
decent
weird.
match. I mean, like, the weirdest thing I can imagine is, like, Baron solo Bellona support, and, like, Bobby was playing Erlong Shen support earlier this week, so there is some potential there. But if we're going to go by history and what is most likely, I think it is Baron Samedi in the support role, and it will be pretty strong because generally Nox in lane as a support is going to be constantly looking for Shadow Lock. The main strength of Nox in the laning phase is her ability to poke out, especially in 9-5. Now that's so difficult to actually get that kill. But Baron Samedi having all that in-combat healing that is largely going to go unmitigated during the laning phase takes a little while before you can itemize towards anti-heal, before Brawler's Beat Stick, Toxic Blade, Pestilence, Contagion all become, a topic of conversation. So the survivability of the Valk's duo lane is incredibly high. I like that the Baron Samedi has also got some decent answers to the Dodge G. CC immunity, the ultimate, means that you're not going to be as large a target of aggression. I think the Valks likely would have loved to go towards Khepri, but with the Dodge G lock-in, it's going to dissuade you from that. Khepri pretty weak in the early game anyway, so you don't really want to line up against an early game composition that the Bolts have got. Baron Samedi feels like a pretty decent middle ground.
And I think he's going to be fun to watch, the CC that can come through. And specifically, I always like watching how a Life of the Party can get used. We've seen it, like, the perpetual dragon that pro players go for. Like, a lot of the times you see a Baron and just general, whether you queue in ranked or you just dropped into a casual game, they throw their ult out, they pull the dude in, that's it. Ranked player, like SPL, SCC, like competitively, they prolong that ult so much, and like just like it's almost torment to the person. It feels like torture with how they keep them perpetually dragged in. Either way, that one should be fun. Bellona and Osiris. If you watched Season 2 Smite, this is a matchup you should be very familiar with. If you played Season 2 Smite, you're maybe even more familiar with it. A lot has changed since then, Myth, but looking at those two solo laners, especially considering how much we highlighted Haddix, do you think that them kind of having to be like a little tankier, a little more on the forefront is going to change the way either of these two play?
I am curious. I think that Bellona in particular has seen some pretty sweeping changes to her playstyle. If we see that new age build of Golden Blade in the first slot, then you sort of itemize a little bit more so towards damage. Yeah, so Bellona going to deal more, and Osiris generally going to be a little bit squishier than he once was, considering how many kin size are likely to be picked up. Not that he's any squishier. Actually, he's legitimately just tankier thanks to 9-5. But Bumba's Hammer gets additional value because it's percentage HP healed. I think that they're both going to be incredibly tanky targets in the late game. Bellona might be a little bit more damage leaning, and Osiris's tankiness is going to come from healing if he decides to go for that Bumba's Hammer rather than just having more defense and more HP 5 than everybody else. But otherwise, whether or not it affects actual play on field, how's it going to look compared to seasons of past, you're still fulfilling the same role. You're still that frontliner, initiator, and space creator for your team as long as you're playing a warrior.
I'm just excited to watch how this matchup, I think, shakes out. Like you had said, specifically from Vin's interview, how relaxed and very obviously the fact that they are still just playing their own meta and not necessarily adhering to what we've seen over the last week and a half, trying what they've been experiencing, I think is impressive. The Jingwei, yeah, we've been seeing that, but Bear's got 104 games on her. He's been playing it anyway.
104, 105.
This will be the 105th, right? So he's got 104 already. And so he's playing the Jingwei no matter what. Whether it was better or not, the guy likes going back to it. But the Nox, I think even the Osiris, like the Dodge G, those three picks, even though we've seen a smattering of them, well, maybe not the Nox, at least the Osiris and the Dodge G, it feels like the Bolts are bringing in their own flavor. But we'll find out how well it works for them here in the last single game of the tournament. It's the Bolts, it's the Valks, and it's J-Mac and Trelly.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gore and Myth. Man, actually contextualize the fact that this is the last best of one that we're going to be seeing for the remainder of this tournament. It's going to be the Bolts and the Valkyries to square off in that matchup. And this is, Trelly, a very Bolt style of draft. I mean, the Nox, Venenu going to Morgan, Lasbra on Daji. This just feels like, and obviously going to the other side with the Valkyries, these two teams feel like they have just drafted what has worked for them in the past.
Yeah, we haven't seen too much of the, Nox support or the Baron support. We saw a bit of Baron support, but since this tournament started, we really have not seen too much of it. Awesome Jake is a big fan of the Nox support, obviously. I just thought maybe with these changes, mages and the support role would be a little bit less tanky, wouldn't be able to work, but looks like we're still going to be able to see that. And Awesome Jake actually starting a horrific emblem, so could be starting to get some early aggression in that lane, maybe trying to force out. In early beads, you have two good targets, because Gamma and Wowie both have picked up the beads here just in case. But Addicts and Aquarius alike, they're not going for anything new here in the start column as well. Just Death's Toll and Berserker Shield. Nothing like that Golden Blade Star Myth was touching on.
Yeah, nothing like the Golden Blade. Awesome Jake eating a lot of damage in this duo lane. Something that we don't get to see too often is just how much poke and pressure has been put in the duo lane. Times of old, sure, we'd see duo lane, down to a quarter HP after the first wave, but with this 9-5, it's not something that we see too often. But going back to that solo lane, going for this Berserker Shield style, even the fact that we're not seeing like the Bumba's Hammer, which has become such a popular pickup even over in that solo lane, might be the most surprising thing about this matchup.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, let's have to see if they're able to outbox the ADC's late game. Obviously, Barracuda on Jingwei is nothing out of the ordinary, and even the Rama, Wowie playing the Rama isn't anything crazy either. It's just going to be, are you going for that tried and true Berserker, Shogun's Frostbound build, or are you going to switch things up as you go on? I imagine Witchblade will get a fair bit of value as the game goes on anyways, so we'll have to see if that is something that they want to itemize into. Benny-Q going back to this Merlin, though, is interesting as well, because he didn't have the greatest time on it. Hold that thought. Lasbra taking some damage here, but will get out just fine. Kirmi getting very aggressive already.
Yeah, Kirmi really wants to play aggressive. This Circuit is something that's been a signature pick of Kirmi's, even going back towards the SCC LAN back in Season A. This is a god that he really was able to mesh well with this team, find some really big picks, and kind of get the ball rolling early on. But ever since the changes of Circuit, the kind of not really rework, more so like the restatting of this god, we haven't really seen a whole lot of her.
One thing I just noticed is that Ven actually did go for the Gilded Arrow in mid on the Morgan, so trying to get some extra gold online. I have to imagine he's not going to go for the Diamond Arrow, right? He probably sells it late game, doesn't really need it. Maybe he is going to go a pseudo auto attack style build on the Morgan. She has some interesting mechanics with her AoE auto attack. We'll have to see how he ends up itemizing anyways, but right now I think he just wants some extra gold. He doesn't want to get out-farmed by everyone else on the map, and will just be going for that Gilded in the mid lane.
Gamma eats a full Nox combo plus some damage from Barra, and then we'll heal a good bit of it back up. And that's kind of the downside of fighting up against a Baron, especially, Baron in the support role as he gets a little bit of that extra tankiness. It just feels so hard to really chip away at the dual lane that the Valkyries have drafted. So when it comes down to the Olympus Bolts and the team comp that they have, Trelly, do you think that there's some easy applications of anti-heal outside of just Haddix's ultimate?
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll be able to itemize into it pretty well. Ven, not the best applier of it, I would say, at the Morgan. I usually like transforming into people with anti-heal and not building it myself, just because you can usually get it pretty easily that way, and I think Mori is one of those characters that has a lot of niche items that she really needs. Doomorb comes to mind, Polynomicon sometimes used. That will be the horrific for the beads there, so Awesome Jake forces that. Could be a chance for Lasbra to come over and find a gank in this lane, because Gamma's only level 4. We'll be taking over level 5 shortly, but Lasbra doesn't have the Palo yet either, so it's going to be a race against the clock. Kirmi, though, he's on the way.
Kirmi hunting down. Jake and Barra are here. Ultimate goes on to Jake. He gets thrown right back to the wolves. Finds the silence on to Gamma to slow things down. A couple of autos for Barra. One more is needed, but a good heal will keep him alive, and Jake will be the first one down. Meanwhile, opposite side of the map, Haddix picks up a returning kill up against Aquarius.
Yeah, Lasbra recognized the right side of the map didn't have beads, whereas even though the left side did, it'd be an easier kill on this side. Kirmi hit 5 pretty early on and wanted to find that gank as well. So you're trading your support's life for the first blood onto Kirmi, and then your solo laner's life for a return kill. This time, Haddix gets credit for that one, so Lasbra's not going to be able to match that pressure that Kirmi has, at least for that first item, Transcendence, but a little bit of damage here, and Penny-Q getting very low. I can't imagine Lasbra wants to dive this, though. That's a hard-hitting tower right now this early on.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to make that kind of a dive. We actually do get to take a look to see what had actually happened during that engagement. It's just a quick blink in on the side for Aquarius, and he held on to Eagle's rally for a while, and then used it in place. And we've seen this so many times, you know, from these soul laners. They feel like they're going to die, so they just up, down, right in place, but more often than not, doesn't usually pan out.
Yeah, I think Lasper would have had the palo either way, so just trying to get a little bit of damage, maybe looking to try and trade a kill onto Haddix, but pick the perfect time to use that Lord of the Afterlife. Anytime you ult first in this matchup, I mean, again, Gore touched on it on the desk. We've seen Osiris versus Bellona for years now. This has been a very tried-and-true matchup that we see all the time. Whoever ults first usually loses. It's pretty easy to time that. But if you time your ult forward when that bludgeon's spinning, Aquarius can't cancel that, so he's stuck in that animation. Great time to ult to make sure that you get that, at least the damage connection and the 100% anti-healing if that Lord of the Afterlife does connect. So just a great play by Haddix. And now we're just looking at a 1 versus 1 in the kill department, I should say. And the gold's looking pretty even. It's really just that first blood bounty that Kirmi got credit for on the side of the Valks.
So now then, I put the question to you, Trelly. The typical builds that we've been seeing with these auto attack warriors, it's been what, berserkers, shoguns, maybe you throw a frostbound or something like that in there, and you kind of just itemize, you know, for the remainder of the matchup, whatever, you know, the problem ends up being. Do you think that things like Witchblade or whatnot might need to come into effect going up against this, into this matchup directly?
Yeah, I definitely think Witchblade's on the horizon for both of these warriors. I don't imagine you need a Shoguns right away because who are you really worried about magic-wise? Merlin is going Chronos Pendant, so BennyQ's not going to be that big of a threat to Haddix this early on. And Ven is usually going to turn into a physical character to apply his damage as well. So I don't think a Shoguns is going to be necessary. Maybe a Frostbound, maybe a Witchblade. You can go a few different items here. I just don't think magical defense is needed right away. These mages aren't going to be doing the full brunt of their damage this early on. I'm only 6 minutes into the game.
With the first spawn of the offerings, it looks like it was an even 3-3 split between them. So it will be a little bit of time before we see a Trebuchet spawn in for these teams. We've seen mixed impact with the Trebuchets. We've seen one of them kind of help with a tower push here and there. We've seen one really good play where you get 2 towers while pushing up a fire giant all at the same time. So a little bit of maybe mixed reactions with this new mechanic in here, but now that these SPL teams are finally starting to get underway, now that we're finally starting to see what these guys can do, I've got high expectations for that objective.
Yeah, I'm a massive Trebuchet enjoyer. I like seeing what these teams are able to do with the pushes. If they are able to like split up, say, hey, we're going to go left, Trebuchet goes right. We're going to send it down mid and see if we can focus a Gold Fury, something like that. Or just, hey, 2 people had to rotate in because we pushed that trap. Maybe we'll gank the other lane. Things like that. If you're able to really capitalize on it, it can usually be a pretty big spike in your favor right now, as you mentioned, looking about even. So we'll have to see which one of these teams. We haven't seen too many go in for the steals. You know, it's very far to push up right now for that reward. And since it's not as quite obvious when you see the scepter on yourself, for example, I don't think they really like risking their lives for it anymore. So Awesome Jake probably is going to be defending these oracles and not going to sacrifice his health bar to make sure that Trebuchet goes on his side.
Especially with these offerings only taking a single hit to drop them. There's no real fight or steal potential with them any longer compared to what they used to be. And it looks like with another rotation of these, so long as the bottom right one over on the blue side of the map there gets taken, it'll keep an even split. But there's potential for our first one, and Awesome Jake gets pulled in from the Serket ultimate. Will root down one. He's got some backup with Barracuda, but not enough backup to save him out. Needs one more auto attack from Wowie, one more auto attack from anybody. How is Jake still alive? The snipes have got to be good. Needs at least one more to hit. Finally does get him. Wowie drops him, but Lazarus rejoined the fight and picks up a double kill of his own. Barracuda goes down to Wowie, so it's a double kill across. Make that a triple, though, for Lazarus. Now up against Wowie. This could be an early quadra kill up. Venenu goes up and pulls in one. No, he does not. The beats from Wowie keep him in. But now Haddix has rotated to the fight and helps Lasbro pick up a quadra kill 8.5 minutes in. Are you kidding?
Lasbro, where's your teleport? Go get Aqua, man. The pet is right there. Unfortunate that Haddix actually teleported in just in case there was a possibility of Gold Fury, just in case they really needed that chase down. Massive plays from Lasbro. Unfortunately, Barrett and Jake are going to fall during that, and Wowie does hit 2 out of 3 snipes to guarantee that. So not I mean, it does look massive. I was going to say not a huge swing, but Lazarus has 4 kills now. His Transcendence is almost completely stacked up. It's only nets about 1,000 gold in favor of the Olympus bolts, but still massive plays there. And the Valks were able to answer back a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the Valks did get a couple of kills of their own, but the big thing is that Lazarus comes in a little bit late to this fight, able to pick up one early on, getting BennyQ out of the fight, so important for this team. And more importantly, you know, for the Bolts, Lazarus is always one of those players we talk about. When Lazarus popping off, this team looks nigh unstoppable. So getting an early quadra kill for your jungler, Probably one of the best starts the Bolts can ask for.
I mean, besides maybe an early
Penta.
pentakill, I suppose.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
it doesn't
that's why I
get-
said one of.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. I think that's a fair analysis by you there, J-Mag. Lazarus probably feeling pretty good. You have a lot of relics down. WoWie did have to use the beads there, so we could see a little bit more aggression in that duo lane. But right now, just grouping up in the 3v3. No one really looking for any buff invades just yet. I think more so just playing their own side of the map. No one wants to overcommit. But now that Lazarus has a full hi-rez built already. This is the hardest hitting character on the map, bar none. Anytime Dodgy catches someone in the jungle, I'm taking that 1v1. I'm not really worried about it. One lead you will be interested to see right now is the fact that hi-rez, again, did teleport to that left side of the map, so Aqua has the level lead at the moment. Does have a full Frostbound Hammer over hi-rez, and it looks like Lazarus is going to join over here.
Lazarus will teleport in, waiting out that Eagles rally from Aqua. He's just fighting into everything. The Bludgeon Slam is good, but Aqua not going to elect to use that Eagles rally until those chains come out. But now Lazarus got to find a path out. Does get the pull up against Kirmi, who used the ult up against hi-rez, who should go down in this fight with Gamma rotating over. The Coffin won't get the distance to pull him in. Instead, Gamma's got to turn his sights to Lazarus, who will be able to sneak his way out. But now that Jake has rejoined the fight, Kirmi low, but Kirmi will be out.
Ven has ult here, though, transforms into the Osiris and will just have to back off. I was going to say, is there going to be any transformation here? Is there a way that Dodgy can chase this down? But was locked into the Osiris there, and no more chase will ensue. Amazed again that Aqua was able to hold the Eagles rally for so long, just waiting to the last second, and then juked out the last of those Palau shots. So no kills net there. Pretty much just a wash, I would say. Both mid laners show up. Obviously, BennyQ didn't use an ultimate, but Ven did have to use his ult as well. So just showing some face over on the right side of the map, helping out their solo laner. Still seeing a little bit of a lead, though, for Aqua, just because he had to back. He has teleport. He's going to be getting back as quickly as possible.
You gotta love watching when somebody knows that a Nox is trying to root them and they're doing everything in their power to try and
sidesteps.
like BennyQ is literally serpentining in like the same like 6 pixels of an area at that point, but making sure that he can try not to at least eat the full combo of Jake. And I gotta highlight Jake. For how many times he's played this Nox, it still impresses me how often he's able to land those 1-2 combos.
Yeah, it's not the easiest ability to hit anytime you have the juke shoes. It's really just a mind game. Like, am I going to juke back into the silence to make sure the Shadow Lock doesn't hit? Am I just going to run away as fast as possible? Or do I just pre-beads? That sort of thing is what you always got to keep in mind. It looks like Jake going into the Lonos mask pretty early on here, wanting to be as tanky as possible. As we see, Gold Fury has some vision around it, just making sure that if the Valks are a little bit worried about any sort of quick burn. We already saw hi-rez teleport over, so I think it will be on their mind for a little bit just in case it sneaks. So they have the vision available. They have a trebuchet on that side of the map as well. So WoWie should be getting some pressure back in this lane. Barracuda was pretty far up and has a decent level, build advantage, I should say, but WoWie has 2 kills. It's really just how well this Jingwei can farm. It's amazing he's up 200 gold with 0 kills.
And this is where we get to see a little bit of the downside of the trebuchet because it has that ranged distance that it has to fire from. Barracuda is able to keep out of that distance for just long enough to prevent any of those shots from hitting him, and then subsequently any of the trebuchet from getting to the tower. So the one in the left lane will go away. Gamma rotating in towards back in the mid lane. Thought maybe we'd see a little bit of a wraparound by this Baron, but not going to be the case. Ven and Jake will not have to worry about what Gamma's going to do on this Baron, at least for a little while longer.
No, it's wrap it up.
Right. He wraps around to wrap him up.
Right, okay. I just thought maybe
Yeah.
you were talking about the third. Either way, I'm keeping my eyes on the junglers right now. Kirmi and Lazarus obviously were in base there, so I don't think there's any sort of fighting at the moment. If there is, I think it's usually going to be headlined by Lazarus. Right now he has been, wherever he's at, usually there's going to be some fights. Even if the kills don't net, they're just saying, hey, wait for the Dodgy. There's a 4-0 Dodgy right now. We should probably wait for Lazarus to start these fights. And Aqua now has beads and ult available, so solo lane not going to be your best bet unless hi-rez is able to force something out. And you're up against a Frostbound Bologna right now. Super annoying to deal with. In lane, it's going to be hard to poke him down. Either way, though, it looks like hi-rez will go for the Witchblade, so trying to outbox just a little bit. Probably more so for the late game Hunter. Wowie, you have so much crit you have to worry about. Rama, one of the hardest carries that we have right now in Smite, as Lazarus finally pulls his Pyromancer.
And we'll throw a little bit of damage over the wall. Gamma and Benny both being distracted by Jake. And his Pyromancer should go over to the Bolts unless Gamma can find a steal over the wall. They do pull it away from Benny, so the Bolts will secure a Pyromancer. Can they get out is the big question. Benny will transform into the Dodgy to immune the Coffin out. But who will he pull in? He's found Aquarius, he's found Gamma. Will yank none of them in because the beads and the ult are good, and instead now it's Lasber who's got to use his pal out in response to keep himself alive and try and pull somebody back. He does grab Gamma, and Benny Q goes down off the rotation from Bear, and now Gamma is on the back end of the fight. He's got nowhere to go because he's surrounded by Bear and Ven. It's a question of how long can he delay the bolts? How busy can he keep them? The answer is pretty good so far.
Gonna say,
but finally, Ven does grab him.
That was some juke shoes there. I mean, if they killed quicker, maybe we're looking at a fire giant pull there just because of the fact that Barracuda has so much damage and their targets were so tanky. Wowie did not make that rotation over. He's not Jing Wei. He can't fly. He will go and take that red buff and then run right back over. Maybe we'll see a Gold Fury pull here, but the Oracle Vision is down as well. So Wowie doing as much as he could to delay these objectives, and now all of the bolts are chasing him down.
Wowie going back towards the tier 1. Jake is here, but won't be able to get to him in time. Maybe a wraparound to the back of the tier 1 could prove fruitful, but it seems everybody else on the bolts have already left, so Jake will instead just go ahead and take away some of these offering camps and try and get themselves their first trebuchet of the game. Barracuda will grab one. And as we kind of take a look at the builds, Haddix, as you mentioned earlier, going for the Witchblade, now in towards what I might imagine would be that Shogun's Kasari to try and help Bear out a little bit.
Yeah, now this is where those mages are going to start to swing, so I think Shogun's a smart option for both of these soul laners at level 3. Of course, Aquarius already has it built. He's been pretty much just sitting there in lane, farming, teleporting back in whenever need be. So Haddix is just a little bit farther behind build-wise because he already did upgrade that teleport. He wants that heroic shielding teleport that's going to help him out whenever he tries to make these late rotations to Gold Furies, things like that. Again, keep your eyes on the junglers. Whenever we're seeing Kirami or Lasbro, lean towards one side on the map, that's really where we're going to see some action. Kirami on some backhands at the moment, and Lasbra is heading towards the left. There's no camps open, so you have to imagine they're looking for some sort of invade or the Gold Fury here. Anyone out of position.
Anybody. Lasbra will rotate towards left and maybe try and force the Valkyries to answer towards this Gold Fury. There are 3 in the mid now rotating in towards this left side. Lasbra spots out Benny, teleports on top. He gets a lot of poke damage up onto this Merlin. Benny Q is low, and Benny Q is gone. Haddix will finish that one out. The coffin for Gamma will only delay his health bar. Stun comes through, and Gamma should go down to the damage of Lasbra, who's now on a rampage. 5 up for the jungler.
Yeah, Aquarius did not have the teleport, so was trying to wrap around late. It's not going to work, and now the Olympus Bolts have a pretty free pull here. Wowie goes up a little early. They can wait out these snipes.
Does fire the first, waits for the second and third, but it's a little bit too early, as you call. And the Gold Fury goes to the Olympus Bolt, and the gold lead now pushing up near 4,000 with that objective thrown there. 3,800 XP as well. The Olympus Bolts, a slow burn of an early game to give them this lead.
Yeah, the Valks are going to steal away a bit of the jungle here as Haddix might try and chase them down. I don't think there's going to be anything coming from that, though. Kirami and Aqua are grouped up, and no one else is here to help out Haddix. Either way, just trying to answer back some of that gold that they lost with that Gold Fury. It's a good attempt by Wowie. All you can really do, anytime I am Rama and I know that there's someone on the Gold Fury, I have to go up. I got to check just to see if the snipe potential will be there, but it's a little bit too early and they wait that one out. Lasbra, though, 5-0-3, a part of 8 of 9 of these kills thus far. Wherever he is on the map right now, we're seeing sparks fly. We saw him head towards that left side of the map. We thought maybe we could see a Gold Fury pull, and then immediately Haddix channels that teleport and says, hey, we can do this. Aqua teleported into right lane. There's no way he can make it in time. We have the numbers advantage.
We do actually see Haddix. We thought maybe Shogun's Kasari would have been the call, more attack speed, buff up Barracuda a little bit. Instead, it's Oni Hunter's Garb, an item that's kind of popped its head in and out, especially with items like it and Spirit Robe giving all these damage mitigation stats. This item is becoming kind of sneakily, I can't even call it sneakily popular because it's obviously not in every single build, but it's kind of been creeping its way up in some of these builds.
Yeah, it seems like Oni Hunter's Garb was the move for a bit, and then people were like, wait, Bulwark of Hope is the best magical item in the game. And then like, wait, Shogun's is. And now people are like, mitigations and CCR are still pretty good. So yeah, we're still seeing a little bit of change in the solo lane builds. Either way, Haddix is just trying to be annoying and survive. I can't imagine he's trying to outbox anyone. He hasn't went for anything. He has Witchblade, which is just going to slow down that attack speed. He has so many slows. Once he gets the tether, he's essentially taking less damage, and you're doing less damage. Anytime an Osiris is in the backline, I just feel real bad for whoever's up against it, at least when the Osiris is ahead, or even, as he is right now, 2-0-4, level 17 to Aqua's 18, but still going to be pretty annoying to deal with as Wowie is not really doing enough damage just yet. Barracuda has a full Deathbringer. You're looking at Wowie, who just started tier 1. It's going to be a bit before he's able to swing like that.
Nanu maybe just playing some mind games in the mid lane to throw the decoy in towards the jungle. And I was about to ask you think maybe Spectral would be maybe the next item on the docket for Haddix, but he answers that question before I can even ask it, as he does pick that one up to try and counter the crit that's technically only coming from Wowie in this instance. I guess maybe? No, Kimmy would have to have it in his kit. He'd have to have it in his build in order to actually get that crit damage through with that Deathbane. So Haddix is trying to deal with Wowie the best he can, and what a better way to do so. Counter out pretty much everything in his build.
Yeah, maybe Wowie goes last item, fail not, and then you have to worry about crit from everyone.
Ooh, that'd be spicy. Just like this Pyromancer pull by the Olympus Bolts. There's not much spice to it because none of the Valkyries are even able to get close to try and steal that one away. Yet another neutral objective goes to the Bolts. And they continue to nurse this lead, almost 5,000, up 4,300 to be exact. That's almost 5,000. You're pretty close. You're closer to 5,000 yard of 3.
But not closer than yard 4.
True. That is true. You are closer to 4 in that case.
Right, but now, as you mentioned, no more neutral objectives up unless you're trying to pull the Fire Giant. Right now, it certainly could be on the table. Looking at Barracuda's build, it would go down very quickly, but Tier 1 Tower seems to be what they're looking for here. A 5v5 for a Tier 1 Tower. I don't think they want to commit too hard to this. Maybe if someone steps out of position, you could look to engage, but this is more so let's just throw something at the wall, see what sticks. And right now, it's really some poke from Haddix and some auto attacks from Bear. Maybe if a nice combo from Awesome Jake lands, they can try to engage here. But we're just seeing a Fire Giant style dance around a Tier 1 tower in 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's a new one for me, Trelly, especially with Kirmi getting poked out so heavily early on. Not much of a full 5v5 can go through, especially with Haddix taking a lot of damage now. Aquarius tries to get aggressive in, but he gets locked in place. Meanwhile, Veneno in the backline, Pal Lao, how many people can he even find with that? The answer is 0. So not a single person pulled by that Pal Lao, not even a single, I think, instance of beads or ultimate used to try and get away. Ben just threw out that ultimate and then went, okay, I guess I'm done.
Yeah, Wowie ulted and did some snipes, and that was pretty much all that came from that. The Tier 1 tower survives, by the way. That was the only thing they were really fighting over, and it did not go down. Either way, I think the Bolts just want a few more items online before they do go for a Fire Giant play, so not going to be the worst option there. They just tried to see if they could get some ults, maybe some relics. They didn't overcommit anything, they didn't use too much, and now you're seeing Barracuda has that Envenom Deathbringer, for example, trying to get to level 20 when he can get the Ornate Arrow or the Diamond Arrow. Either one is going to be pretty useful on Jingwei. I think with Ornate Arrow, you're essentially overcapping crit after you pop your explosive bolts, so Diamond Arrow is usually the option for this character specifically, either way. Once you get your full DPS, that's when I'm imagining we will be able to see these Fire Giant pulls. Primal Fury, though, is going to be spawning here shortly in about 5 seconds, and looks like Haddix is here as well.
Yeah, Wowie probably won't make it out of here. He does have beads to get away from the slow, away from the stun. He'll try and box back against Lasbra, who takes a lot of damage from that tower. Wowie will be safe under the Tier 2 tower. And Kirmi finds a taunt up against Haddix, but the Bolts, all this pressure to try and set up for the Primal Fury. And with Wowie gone, no ultimate for a few more seconds, could be a decent pull, or maybe just an even better bait for the Bolts to grab him in.
Yeah, it looks like Wowie is just going to lifesteal up off this wave. He used both relics, but as you mentioned, has the snipes available if need be. Barracuda doing a lot of damage here, and Jake is just going to take this coffin and not care too much about the damage.
He'll be able to dash himself right on out. So that's a big teamfight ult from Gamma, now used for not a whole lot. Awesome Jake looking very healthy. Same with Haddix. Well, I can't call it very healthy. Still seeing about 60-70% HP on that Osiris. But he'll be able to sustain himself up with that Death Soul up against the lane, if anybody gives it to him. But it seems the Bolts have just given up on the Primal for now.
Yeah, they're not too worried about it. I think that if they did go for it and it was stolen away, not a big deal. But they also don't have to commit to this. You have some big buys around the corner here, and I think Barracuda finally will upgrade, and he goes for the Ornate Arrow. So we're going to see essentially a crit every auto attack. Once he's got some cold online, this Jingwei is going to be doing what exactly you'd expect Jingwei to do at 23 minutes. Valhalla Valkryies, though, they realize there's 3 people on the left side, and they're going to pull this.
They got all 5. Lasbra's the only one here to try and slow this one down. Pal Lao will get the ult out of Wowie, and we'll get some decent, at least, poke back on towards Kiri. Lasbra should go down here, but he's got backup to find a path out. Now it's Haddix to try and slow things down. Awesome Jake missed the route up against Gamma. He had to use his beads throughout that. Haddix up down to the middle of 3, and the ultimate from the Nox is doing a lot of work for this team. Kirmi is low. Kirmi is gone. It's Jake Who gets the first shot into the first kill of the fight? Benny Q should go down next. Barra and Haddix both fighting one, but Barra goes down to Benny Q. Gamma is keeping alive as long as he can. That heal, massive to hold him out, but it's not going to hold him out for much longer as 3 of the bolts will chase him out and take him down.
All is left is Aquarius. He has teleport, but there's not really much he can do up against 4 of the bolts. You lost Barracuda, so a lot of your DPS is gone. He does teleport in. He's going to try and be annoying here, maybe go for a steal. You don't have your ultimate either, and Ven's on zone duty.
Yeah, Ven just needs a good stun up against Aquarius to slow this one down. Will find it, and it's now a collapse of the bolts. Aquarius has nowhere to go as he's shadow locked by Awesome Jake and thrown away by Venenu. The bolts get a deicide, and their prize after will be the Fire Giant.
I don't even hate the call by the Valk, because there really were 3 bolts on the left side of the map, but once Lasper went up into that powwow, you have to disengage. I mean, he can stall for such a long time up there. And they're going to be able to wait for Barracuda, so Barracuda will get this Fire Giant around his belt. 3 seconds is all they have to wait, and they'll be able to confirm that. That's why Ven is so far up on the map right now, just making sure no one is going to come in for the steal. So all 5 members of the Bolts will have this buff, and 3 tier 2 towers are standing tall right now. Pyromancer is going to be a solid prize as well. They can go back to base, get some items, zoom their way out with an already 10,000 gold lead. And J-Mac, again, there's still 3 tier 2 towers available.
Yeah, that's a lot of free gold standing on the map. So that was Barracuda's life for all 5 of the Valkyries and Fire Giant and Pyromancer. Barracuda is probably screaming worth to the high heavens for a trade out like that. And he gets the Fire Giant buff at the end of it also. It's not like he really even lost anything throughout all that engagement. The Olympus Bolts, they're playing very well in this first game up against the Valkyries. Remember, nobody goes home with a loss in this one, but it does set up for the rest of the day. And if you can only have to play 1 more set of Smite to qualify into the next group of play, it's definitely better than having to play a couple more.
If I'm taking anything from the interviews we've had with the Bolts, I think Bear was probably screaming not worth. I think he'd rather himself live and all 4 members die. They always say that he's got the biggest ego on the squad, so he's like, did you guys actually just let me die for a puny Fire Giant and Pyromancer? Ridiculous. Either way, he will get the buff, and now they're able to run down this left side tier 2. Lasbra is sort of going to play zone duty in between these 2 towers, while Haddix is pushing down mid as well. If Lasbra sees anything that says, I can go in here, remember, Merlin, no beads or Aegis for 20 seconds. Benny Q is going to have to stay very far back. I think that's what Lasbra's looking for right now. Any chance to just yoink someone with the powwow is going to be taken. Not going to be the option, though. They're going to stay in underneath there. Phoenix, tier 2 and left goes down. Tier 2 and mid, going to fall pretty short after.
Yeah, it's a 3-2 split. Jake and Barra don't really need to be that far up to do anything right now. They can just wait and regroup with the rest of the team. Minions a little bit far in the right lane for a push towards that tower. But now we see a 4-1 split. Haddix being left here, maybe with Venenu kind of being the hover between the teams. The Bolts will put the majority of their team on the left side. Phoenix, a good route from Jake, but a dash, or I should say a heal from Gamma will make sure that he can get a little bit of extra defense over towards his team.
Yeah, and we are going to see Awesome Jake trying to be the front line here. I imagine splitting the map is going to be solid, but it's not enhanced Fire Giant. Haddix is never going to get that mid Phoenix by himself, so Ven will come over and try and help him out. Maybe see if anyone's trying to aggress onto this Osiris. This match, I imagine this is going to be a very slow push here. There still is tier 2 on right. Jake does get a lockdown onto Aquarius and left.
Haddix is just walking in between 2. He's eating a good bit of poke because of it, but he's also returning some good more. Lasbra and Ven both on the powwows. Who are they going to be able to pull in this fight? Meanwhile, Haddix still batting away in the backline. Lasbra low, but Lasbra will not make it out. It's a 1-for-1 trade, and Haddix uses his ult to try and disengage from the fight. Aquarius is batting away at Bear's health bar while he rolls in, but it's only to his own death. The turnaround now into Aquarius is Venenu. Picks up a double kill. Benny teleports out. He does get the alternate timeline, but that will only hold his life for another moment. It's Haddix picking up the kill, but Kirmi has now taken out Lasbra, and he is back to full HP. It is going to be a tall task, a major defense from this Circuit to hold 3 of the Bolts out of the throne room.
Yeah, and they still have a tier 2 tower up and 2 Phoenixes. They are going to try to go for the end here.
Kirmi goes back to the base. There is a minion wave, but the Bolts are not doing a whole lot of damage, just waiting, baiting out anything he can from Jake. Kirmi, you got to get in there to try and stop this somehow. Does find a taunt. It will jump over the silence, throws Barracuda back towards the Titan. Kirmi getting a lot of damage through, but it's just not going to be enough. Maybe Gamma can show up and help him out. Kirmi does manage to take down 1, and now it's just the dual lane of the Bolts left here. Gamma, I'm sorry. You're there, you're helping out, you're keeping them back, but wow, what a play by Kirmi to keep them in.
And Awesome Jake reset that Titan, I think 3 times. Are we going to end? Are we going to end? No one really knew if they were able to go for that one or not, and they will end up resetting. All things considered, J-Mag, that's a left side Phoenix, that's it. I mean, sure, your Titan's low. It'll respawn. The health will come back if you're able to defend. That's not going to be too huge of a deficit for the Valhalla Valkyries to come back from the gold lead. Now, that is going to be pretty massive, obviously. Either way, not going to be the end call. Now they have a chance to come back into this game. VennyQ lost the alternate timeline, so he's not going to have be able to defy death any longer if they do get to this Merlin. That death will be sticking. Ben's still down for 8 though, so I imagine they're probably gonna have to wait for enhanced Fire Giant before they do siege this base one more time.
With that fire with the Titan at half HP, it's gonna be a tall defense for the Valkyries, especially with that left side Phoenix pushed down. The Olympus Bolts can regroup themselves for Fire Giant. They should have ample opportunity to take this away, especially with how much of a distraction Haddix is playing up against VennyQ and Wowie. But now that Haddix is eating a fair bit of damage from the 2 carries of the Valks, he will back himself back up. Kirmi rotating in, does find the leap, but won't go any further than that.
Yeah, not going to chase this one down just yet. Enhanced Fire Giant's not even up. Any time that the Valks can stall here for their left side Phoenix to spawn in is going to be good for them. Looks like Ven did end up selling that Gilded Arrow, so we will not see that item finish. It's just going to be a Rod of Tahuti in that last slot. Jake dashes in, though.
Jake goes in the middle of 3, and now with Aquarius in the middle of it all, the Coffin does find some Jake. Kirmi goes in the back to find Venenu, who's getting sniped down by the mid laner, goes up into his own pal Lau with the transformation to try and hold his life bar as long as he can. But Lasbra and Venenu will now have a trade out here as it's 1-for-1. Aquarius falling low, but will not go down just yet. The heal from Gamma keeping him going just a little bit longer, but Barracuda finally will take down VennyQ. Lasbra will take down Aquarius, and the dual lane that was all that was left will be no more. It's yet another quadra kill for Lasbra to close out the game and bring the dub for the Olympus Bolts.
Lasbra goes back-to-back with 2 quadra kills. Only ends up 9-1, meaning that only 1 kill was not a part of both of those quadra kills. The left side Phoenix is still down, so they're not too concerned about these Phoenixes. They will waltz in. They didn't get it the first time. The second time, this Titan is certainly going to fall.
Yeah, there's no one to stop the Bolts from grabbing this one. A nice win for the Olympus Bolts to start this tournament out for them in their first games played. A little bit rough to kind of say the least in some points here, but the Olympus Bolts able to pull it out, and that puts them 1 set closer to moving on to the final group.
Yeah, that first quadra kill that Lasbra got was nuts. That was all him. That second one, that was really just peeling for Barracuda. It really seemed like the Jingwei was free casting, and Lasbra got some last hits on that one. So got to give credit to the 31,000 damage that Barracuda was able to do that game. That's pretty much what happens when you let Jingwei get to that point where she has a full style build, and no one's really focusing on the team fights.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Barra had like full crit by the time that game ended,
did.
because he bought, I think, like 4 individual crit items throughout all of there. So pretty much every time that Barra was throwing out a basic, you know it's going to be doing some extra damage out there. Lasbra starting his game off at 8 minutes with a quadra, and then ending the game with another quadra. Olympus Bolts and Lasbra specifically got to feel good about that. But that's all from us. We'll take it over to the desk to break down the game.
Well, rocky start. Well, not a rocky start. They had a kind of explosive start, then a rocky middle, and then
Rocky for one team.
they end up taking a pretty controlling and demanding lead. A quadra kill was it like 8 minutes in, 5 minutes
Yes,
in, somewhere in
sir.
that weird range of way too early to get that many kills at once, and then it kind of follows that path, Mifflin. Admittedly, it is a little more difficult than just, hey, they got a quadra kill, they win the game. But they get a quadra kill super early and then have a lead for the rest of the game.
Yep. It's just dominant performance. The Olympus Bolts clearly sticking to their guns and playing gods that they've been playing for a good long while. But you gotta highlight Lasbra. No way someone gets 2 quadra kills and you don't give them all the credit on the planet, right? But if you just evaluate how Lasbra affected the game pace, not only play on field, but also in P's and B's, that Daji pick just felt so pivotal for the Olympus Bolts. It really did stop a whole lot of the strengths of the Valhalla Valkyries just draft-wise. But a quadra kill at about the 10-minute mark will net you a pretty easy path to that mid-game point, and the Olympus Bolts were able to leverage it very, very well. Specifically, I think not just Lasbra, but also Haddix and Ven deserve all the credit that you can laud upon them. Just phenomenal performance from those core 3. Barracuda gets some licks in as well, and the Valhalla Valkyries weren't quite able to line up. I think this one really was a whole lot of draft diff, though. It just felt like the Olympus Bolts had an answer to every single team fight. Every initiation for the Valhalla Valkyries would either just not confirm a kill because Laz was incredibly slippery on this 9-1 Bumba's Hammer Daji, and then, well, you didn't kill Lasbra, you just chased him to a Greater Scorpion. All of a sudden, the Valhalla Valkyries are out of position, and the reinitiation of the Olympus Bolts just incredibly strong. Through and through, dominant performance from the second seed.
And just something that I think immediately makes them stand out, right? Again, they came into this saying, you know what? We're going to play our meta. Like they've got theirs, we've got ours.
Hope
We'll
it
see
works.
what's a little bit better. Yeah, it worked. It worked really well, as it turns out. And even though I was thinking, and maybe partially, I don't even know if the word hoping is right, but thinking that we'd get to see something a little stronger from the Valks this time around. The Bolts are just really good at Smite. In case, if you're like me and you somehow forgot that over the last month, this was a very emphatic statement for them. They get to move forward now. They're going to go up against the Dragons, a nice little rematch from about a month ago at this point. To see who, at that time, was going to be first seed here. Now it's to see who can immediately go into tomorrow. So that's going to be next up. All best of threes until finals, a best of 5 from this point out. So everything, it's getting a little more competitive, a little more heated here as we take a peek see at the bracket again. Dragons and Bolts will be playing up in just a few minutes. Later today, the Hounds and the Valks get their second chance to try and fight through. And based on what we heard earlier from Crimson, this was the matchup they were prepared for the most, so this is something that I think is going to be exciting to see. Loser of this next matchup, and of course, the winner of the matchup after that, will end up playing each other a little bit later today, and they'll determine the other team that moves forward to tomorrow.
Man, just a scary thought, right? Match 29, you compete for the chance to either play against the Olympus Bolts or the Jade Dragons, right?
What a prize!
Man, can't wait to stick around and work for that one. It's got to be tough, but as you said, the other towns clearly have the Valhalla Valkyries in their sights, and even just playing upset for one of these SEC teams to remove the Valkyries from contention is massively impressive.
Yeah, imagine on your competitive resume, you can be like, yeah, so at Smite Masters in Season 8, we removed 2 SPL teams. Like, even if that's all you did.
So impressive.
Best case scenario for you, you could remove 3 if you win the next 2 sets for them. And so that's insane to be able to think about. But they've got a lot of work to be able to get there to that point. Plus, a little bit of waiting to do, right? Because the Dragons and the Bolts will be playing up next. Now, after you saw that, the Bolts coming in and playing, I think, very similar to what we've seen them
Bolts
play.
play Bolts.
And yeah, they played what they've been playing. The Dragons played a triple Hunter comp with Poseidon in the jungle. If you just took the 2 comps we just saw, who you leaning towards? I can see it in your face already.
I just can't think this Jade Dragons draft can work against these other teams that are so good at farming similarly, right? The whole strategy of that Dragons draft was, we're going to farm better, we're going to be ahead, and we're going to go jam down some objectives. And that works when there's a disparity between the SPL and the SEC. These SEC guys haven't got nearly as much experience playing at that level on the map. I'd love to see the Jade Dragons try that draft again, but history and just classical Smite knowledge just dictates that draft shouldn't work.
Speaking of history, this is a matchup that has been tenured over years and years and years and years and years of Smite, and I'm gonna break it down for you Bolts fans. It's not been a Bolts favored matchup. Dragons typically come out on top of this one more often than not. We'll see though if they can do it one more time as we kick into a quick break, and when we come back, it's the Dragons and the Bolts.